from Matthew's 4th chapter come these words, a description of Jesus being tempted. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and afterwards he was famished. The tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again it is written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. And he said to him, "All these I will give you if you will fall down and worship me." Jesus said to him, "Away with you, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Then the devil left him, and suddenly angels came and waited upon him. So ends the reading of God's holy word. Invite us to pray. Eternal God of light and understanding and wisdom, we turn to you as we listen to these ancient words from Matthew's Gospel, ancient and yet so timely. Help us to not be caught up in perhaps the strange nature of the temptations that are described, but to reflect deeply and by your grace upon our own temptations, our own need for you, and your source of goodness and love. May we be blessed in reflecting upon these precious words. Amen. Jesus was practically still dripping wet from his baptism when he's sent out into the wilderness to be tempted. No rest for the weary. Isn't that the way of it? We just get out of the bath and then somebody calls us and wants something done. Maybe they need a tire changed or a baby changed or something changed. And so we go from squeaky clean back to down and dirty. Just a moment. It happens so many times, I think, that I've come to be a little wary when I feel like my spiritual tank is full, because I figure it's only a matter of moments before I'm going to have to put the pedal to the metal and use it. With the holy words of God almost still echoing those words that said, "This is my beloved, in him I am well pleased," Jesus encounters none other than the great adversary, the one who will bring him to the test, to see if, in fact, this one so steeped in God, will stay steeped, or could he be led astray? Dangling in front of Jesus in the hands of the devil were comfort, safety, and power, all of which you can get in a brand new Ford 150 for just about $30,000. Comfort, safety, and power. But in the case of Jesus, it cost a lot more than $30K. It was the cost of his soul forsaking the one thing most precious to him, his intimate connection with his God. As far as I know, most of us probably aren't accosted by red-faced demons with horns, but we are nonetheless tempted, I believe. Tempted to stray. It's generally not an outright rebellion against God, but more like a benign drifting. I have a couple of props that are right in front of me, in front of the pulpit here. A few years ago, when I was repairing a porch railing, I needed to cut 17 pieces of wood like this one to use as uprights, as spindles in the railing. So I cut the first piece to 22 3/4 inches, and things were starting out great. But then I made a mistake. I started using the piece I just cut as the measurement for the next piece. And even though I started out exactly right with 22 3/4 inches, by the time I got to the 17th cut, I had accumulated some error. I think I was off as much as about 1/4 inch, maybe by the time I got to the last upright, which when you're trying to get all the children lined up and stuck inside the railing can be a real pain in the neck. Might as well be 4 inches. What I needed to do, of course, was to measure each piece, 22 3/4, before I cut. I needed to go back to the original standard. It's not really complicated. I just got lazy, didn't pick up the tape measure. I think that keeping ourselves on the spiritual path isn't necessarily complicated either. I don't think we have to climb a mountain and consult a guru. I don't think it's necessarily about a lot of fasting or self-denial. I don't think we have to give away all our earthly possessions and go live in a cardboard box. But we do, I believe, need to return to our source, our strength, our God, and get reoriented and rejuvenated. Years ago, my nephew came up to visit, and he wanted to paddle across the lake in the kayak, and he just acquired one of these GPS gadgets, and he was thrilled to have it with him when he went across the lake. But what that little gadget taught him was that in spite of every effort he made to go absolutely straight across the lake, when he brought that gadget back home and put it on a map, his path was like this. You wouldn't know it at the time, but it wasn't straight. I think this is where community comes in, because I think we need one another. We can be each other's GPS, I suppose, but we need one another to help stay in tune, stay on track. It was the great Abe Lincoln that said, as you know, you could probably recite this, you can fool all the people some of the time, some of the people all the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time, which is the strength of a community. Because somebody here is going to see that little spot of mustard on my shirt and let me know before I get up and preach. Maybe everybody else will miss it, but the one person will let me know. That's a little trivial, but in a deeper sense, we can all help each other stay focused on God. Jesus, in this scene with Satan, was being subjected to some pretty compelling offers. He was, after all, not a bad guy, Jesus. He probably could have done very well as general manager of Earth. Think of the good he might have been able to bring about. But there was that little catch of bowing down to Satan. But just for a moment, for a fleeting moment, might he have considered the offer? He had a good heart, maybe the best heart. And he would have been given dominion over the world. He would have been made God. But the position was taken, and Jesus knew it. Back to woodworking for a moment. One of the things I like about woodworking is that there's still 12 inches in a foot. In a world in which truth seems to be a casualty in various wars of words, it can be reassuring to gaze back at the tape measure and reassure myself that, yep, some things are still solid and true. Our church has entered the season of Lent when we traditionally engage in self-examination, as individuals, as a body. And we dare to enter into that experience of realigning ourselves with the Holy One. and all that the Holy One has given us. We do it through prayer, through reflecting on the Word, through revisiting some of the precious stories of our faith, through gathering as people of God. We do it while eating delicious soup. And there is kind of an echo of austerity in our soup suppers as we partake of this very simple meal. But this year, our particular meals, our gatherings, are lavish in the sense that we are paying attention to the great gifts of creation. Trees, and bees, and water. It's not obviously an exhaustive list of God's blessings, but they do symbolize the rich goodness that God has placed in our care. And along with some really tasty soup and bread, perhaps we'll be gifted as well with a renewed reverence for God's natural gifts to us. I think one of the greatest gifts that nature gives to me is its capacity to ignite awe. A sunset, a rose, a waterfall, an eagle that we saw on the way to the North Country this past week, bald eagle, all have the power to remind us that there is a God and it ain't us. And that in itself is, I think, wonderful realignment and healing. There's a lot of pride, and there's a lot of arrogance and hurt that's been unleashed in our world. We don't have to go very far to find it. And so I think it's all the more important for us to find the antidotes to such things. Antidotes like compassion and humility and reverence and faith. There's no question such gifts aren't always easy to find when the winds of the world start to batter us. I want to offer one watery illustration, an illustration that just goes to prove what my mug says on it. I'd rather be sailing. But there's a funny thing about sailing as I reflect on my experiences doing it. It's relatively easy to do when you have no destination. For example, if you don't care if you get back home, it's a pretty simple, easy thing to just get in a boat and let the wind take you where it will. On the other hand, to reach a point, to sight on a point across the lake, for example, and attempt to reach that place is a very different matter. Because I find that as soon as I set my sights on that place, things get challenging. I have to keep my heading, I have to harness the wind, I have to continually adjust the sails because everybody knows on the Finger Lakes, if you don't like the wind direction, wait a minute. I also have to keep an eye on the sky because things can come over the hills quickly. And the clock. And by all means, I have to stay awake because nothing gets in the way of a good sail like a pop-up nap. And I think it's a good image for our spiritual journey as we set our sights on life with God and endeavor to live as closely as possible to that model of Jesus. Things do get tougher when we try. G.K. Chesterton wrote the following. He said, Christianity has not been tried and found wanting, it's been found difficult and not tried. Well, we're trying it. Right here, United Church of Bristol, up on the hill. Doing it to the best of our ability with a little help from our friends. A lot of help from God. We're all works in progress. Sometimes it's comforting to remember that and know that we're not alone in our imperfect efforts. Maybe you've heard this one, I'm going to share it with you. A sister church of ours was publicizing one of their suppers in their church bulletin, and it read as follows: the church will host an evening of fine dining, superb entertainment, and gracious hostility. At least it's gracious. A little editing, a little fine tuning every so often is a good thing. By the grace of God, maybe we can offer those things to one another as we move through this season of Lent together. Amen.